Dive into the pulse of Bills football with Turf to Tape, where veteran sideline reporter Sal Capaccio and film room guru Eric Turner deliver a one-of-a-kind podcast experience, combining Sal's unparalleled access to players and coaches with Eric's razor-sharp film breakdowns. The show bridges the gap between casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. This is Turf to Tape.
This is Turf to Tape, brought to you by Man Brewery. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Turner, and also going to be joined every week by my guy, Sal. He's really the guy and someone that is live at the intersection of access and insight for WGR as a daily beat reporter for the Bills. Sal, I'm excited about this collaboration each and every week, brother.
For sure. I know you and we've talked about doing this for a couple of years now. We had to kind of work out how it could actually work between the two things that we do, and I'm so glad we were able to do it. I respected your work for a long time, and you really provide, and your team over there at Cover One provide a lot of really great insight into the film room and the work that gets done to show the fans what's happening on the field. And, you know, with me being around the team every day and providing that insight and on the sidelines, which is the ultimate goal here, to kind of combine those two, is awesome. I'm also really impressed by that intro and that guy talking. I'm like, I feel like, you know, that was, I mean, I want to be around that guy. He's got a great radio voice, whoever that is. I did that intro. Keep him mysterious. It was great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was, it blew me away when I first heard it. The guys did a really great job on the back end of producing that for us. But we're excited. You know, we do podcasts, other podcasts. You do a lot of appearances. Yeah. And, you know, we didn't want to just bring a show that was just like every other, that's going to talk about the normal topics that everyone's talking about. We wanted to bring a couple different angles to it. And I thought, you know, having some of the film stuff that I do combined with your access, insight, and, you know, your voice with the Bills Mafia, they love your insight. And so I thought that would be, you know, this is a great idea. And like you said, it has been a couple years in the works. And so I want to break down, you know, training camp. You know, it's right around the corner. Talk to us about, you know, when you're reporting, when the players are obviously there on their way. When do you report the camp? What is camp like for you to start off?
Yeah. So, you know, back in the day, I guess we'd say pre-2017, pre-Sean McDermott era for sure. Yeah. But even well back before then, it used to be where, and people can, if you're old enough to remember, you'd remember the media being there when guys checked into their dorms, right? Yeah, and like they were bringing their mattresses, TVs, refrigerators. Yeah, we don't do that anymore. The media is there literally the first day of practice, is the first day that we get to be there ourselves. So we're not there during, check-in day. And really it's full go from there. So if you cover the team on a regular basis, so that would be obviously me, WGR, you know, the Buffalo News, all the TV stations, and there's a lot of outlets that I don't need to mention, but if you're a regular, you get a dorm room that you can stay in, and it's right there on campus. It's in Dorsey Hall. You're very familiar with it.
That's my alma mater.
There you go. And, I really applaud the Bills PR for doing that, because I've talked to a lot of other reporters in other markets. They don't get that. They have to go find hotels, and, you know, it gets expensed and all of that. And, you know, they allow us to stay right there on campus, and it's dorm life. It really is. Now, I'm going to be super honest with you, Eric. I don't camp. I glamp. Okay. I bring my coffee maker. And I used to bring a TV, not anymore, because now you watch things on all your mobile devices and stuff like that. Now, with an 11-year-old son who plays a lot of sports, there's times where I'm like, okay, I don't want to miss this baseball game or something going on for Max, so I might come home. And that's the cool part about being at St. John Fisher for any fan or any reporter. You're just far enough where it's a way that, you know, you can stay up there, or just close enough to come home where, you know, it's less than 2 hour drive. It's an hour and a half, let's say, maybe at the most for some people. And that's cool as well. Then once those daily practices start, literally, like, I'm up probably at 6:30, 7 a.m., depending on when Jeremy and Joe need me on WGR. And I literally I get my coffee. I walk down right near Growney Stadium. That's where their setup is. I join them, talk about the day, talk about the past day, go on the air. And then every day, one of the coaches speaks to the media, and there's a rotation. We have the pre-schedule for us to know exactly when that is. Right. So on day one, it's going to be Sean McDermott, and then afterwards, Brandon Beam. But normally it goes McDermott, then Brady, then Babbage, and they kind of rotate through, and maybe even the new special teams coordinator too, Tabor. Yeah, he'll be on there too. And then once that's over, we go watch practice. Once practice is over, there's always a schedule of players that come to the podium after, or we can request to talk to certain players individually, or some players it's a little more casual where you can talk to them. Now, I will say that's also changed over the years. back years ago, it was kind of a free for all. You just run out there and you start talking to players. That's changed. The dynamic of that particular part of the job has changed. You could still do that with some players, but you have to kind of know that they're there to talk, and you're not just kind of rushing them and putting them in that situation, or you can talk to PR and set it up. So those are the kinds of things that, we're doing. And then of course I have to go on WGR in the afternoon, say what happened, and write a story for WGR550.com. Right. And then it all starts the next day.
Busy day, man. That's so busy. Like I don't think people realize it. It's a grind. Much like camp is for players is a grind. You staying in the dorms, away from the family. There's a grind to it. Although it's an awesome job, but you have a lot to do throughout the day. So I'll be out to camp July 31st and to the scrimmage. So I'm excited to get there and talk to you there. Because I like training camp. As someone who's played a little bit, coached a little bit. The team building. Chemistry building is very important. Obviously, camp is a big thing for that, especially for the Bills being away from one Bills drive and kind of taking their camp on the road each and every year to St. John Fisher. I love the building blocks of, the building of the team. And I think, the context that a lot of fans don't really hear about is that when you're watching these guys in these individual drills, when you're watching individual to 7-on-7 to 11-on-11 to inside, different segments of practice, each practice segment has a purpose behind it. The night before had a meeting. Hey, this is what we're doing the next day. Then they get on the field for individual. They're practicing the little details and techniques that are going towards that play or segment or down and distance for that practice drill. And then each part is just a building block to what they're ultimately going to run in team at the end of practice. Sometimes versus ones, sometimes versus the scout team. But that's what I love about camp. But as a beat reporter yourself, what are you specifically looking for, trying to accomplish each day at training camp?
Yeah, I love that you talk about that, because two quick anecdotes to that. I remember when I was a younger guy, and I was coaching as well down in Florida years ago. And I remember this older coach that had was retiring, and in the Sarasota area, very accomplished. And I was in my 20s, and I remember his quote was something like, what I'll miss the most? He was retiring. He said, I'm going to miss practices. And he said, when I was younger, I would miss game nights. I would miss practices. And I'm like, who misses practices, right? Like,
right.
As I got older, I appreciated that more. You appreciate the building blocks of it. You appreciate the team building, right? And I do too. I really enjoy watching it come together, watching all that. And then to your point about working on different techniques, I also remember several years ago, there was a practice where Eric Wood got mad because a reporter criticized him getting beaten a drill, because he said, look, that reporter didn't know I was working on a certain technique. Like I wasn't trying to beat my guy. I was trying to refine a technique, and it didn't matter if I got beat or not. Right. So to your point of they're working on certain things, right? That's exactly what happens out at camp. So, one thing we don't know, like when we get what you just said, we don't know what exactly they're working on the next day, what they're trying to accomplish as far as their technique or whatever, which you're right. You go out there and it's like, okay, this day they're working on this specific situation, third down and whatever. And we want to make sure our receivers are doing this instead of what they might be doing on first down and 10. So from my standpoint, what I try to do every day is, first of all, there's the big picture, there's the little picture, Eric, right? So from a beat reporter perspective, the big picture is the storylines. Sure. James Cook's a storyline.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'm going to do is see if James Cook's there, and I'm going to watch him and what are his mannerisms? How is he acting? What are his interactions? Is if he doesn't have a contract, is he talking with Brandon Beane at all? Like, these are little things that I'm looking for during practice. This is the big picture stuff. This year, the big picture, Hard Knocks is there. What is that like? These are things that I have to bring to my audience on WGR about what it's like at practice with the big picture, right? And like just kind of the team itself, all the things that are going on, those storylines you're talking about. But then when you get into the nitty gritty of it every day, one thing I really learned, and it's taken me a while. I don't think you get this, you master this right away. And I still don't have it mastered, is I always have to remind myself, Eric, I can't watch everything. I can't watch everything every practice, right?
Hard,
Like I go to OTAs and minicamp and I say, today I'm going to focus on this position group, this side of the ball. If you try to watch everything, you don't see anything. To be quite honest with you, right?
Totally true.
So I've learned I have to kind of pick and choose every day. What am I going to focus on a little bit today to make sure that I see what's happening right there? And by focusing on that, then you pick up other things that you're seeing because you're not realizing you're seeing those other things. So that's what I'm doing. A lot of it is too, unfortunately, a big part of my job is to watch for injuries.
Yeah.
Did someone come off the field limping? Is this person going to see a trainer? What's the injury there? We're not getting specific injury updates, how long they'll be out during training camp. It's not like questionable or whatever during the season, but we'll get an update from Sean McDermott after practice. And a lot of it is, okay, let's see, is this guy, is he going to be ready the next day? Thinking about those kinds of things. So then when I do watch and I do zero in on a player or a position group, it's maybe there's a storyline going on with that guy. Is there a specific position battle going on? Is this guy coming back from an injury? Is this a new guy? How's he integrating into the offense or into the defense? So that's where I'm trying to focus my daily focus on. And again, I've had to learn it's okay to say, hey, I didn't see that happen. I was watching the defense. I didn't see this wide receiver and have this catch or how he's looking with Josh Allen. Now, maybe mentally, now tomorrow, I'll watch for that because people are saying, hey, this is happening, and they want to get that information.
Yeah, it's different. When you're right on the field, you're on the sideline, you have to be more focused and niche down because of where you are, just in proximity. I'm used to being up in the stands because I'm used to watching all 22. I want to see a little bit of everything. And I'm only there for a limited time. So I kind of have to back up a little bit. That's why I think this show is going to be so much fun because we're going to have both angles. But yeah, that's what's different about, camp for a guy like yourself is there are certain things you have to cover. Like you have to, like you said, any injuries. Oh, this guy's on the bike now. He's out of this drill. And little things like that are news. They're newsworthy. And so you do have to report them. And you talked about Hard Knocks, and in the last segment we talked about training camp and the team building dynamic. This is what worries me about Hard Knocks. It is injected. It's in their face. They don't have it. They can't run from it. The players I'm talking about, that dynamic, that pressure, those eyes, that exposure, that does worry me for a team like the Bills. That is, again, kind of tight knit community, a tight knit team. It's really been the MO of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and everyone in this organization, their ability to build a team to, get the most out of their players. So this dynamic of Hard Knocks, like, are you worried about the extra eyes or pressure that this show could bring to the team?
Sure. I think there's definitely some of me that gets concerned about that. But I'll say this, a couple of things. And a part of the reason why I say that is, well, there's no secret, and I'll say it, and I've said it on the radio, the Bills did not choose Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks chose the Bills.
Fair.
The Bills had a choice. They were not going to be on Hard Knocks.
Right.
They didn't have a choice, and the league changed the rules. And because the Bills had kind of done everything right by winning over the last several years, they were ineligible. But the league said, well, it doesn't matter anymore. We're going to change the rules, so we're not getting the same teams. If you made the playoffs, you can still be on it. And, of course, the Bills have. They have the league MVP and Josh Allen.
Right.
And, they're a story around the league. I would say this, though, and I'm an eternal optimist kind of guy, and I look at the positives. I do think that this is the type of team that should be able to handle it better than other teams in the past. And what I mean is this is a team that's had a lot of success and already had all the eyeballs on them for how many years now. They are playing primetime games almost every week. It seems like every other week. They have so many primetime games. They are in the spotlight every week. They're going deep into the playoffs every week. So the focus of the extra media is definitely not going to impact them, I think, like it would a lot of other teams who might not be used to that, or even Bills teams of the past who are kind of growing into this. But I think where I get concerned is, and I use Joe Shane and their Hard Knocks as an example here. We all know that was a disaster, the Giants. But there were things in there that I don't think Joe Shane realized, if I say this, and he's talking that, it's not going to be a big deal. And they did blow up to be a big deal. And you're like, and he's probably going, wait a minute, like, why are people so mad about that? Those are the things that I worry about, which is you could totally just have every good intention, doing everything supposed to do, saying everything supposed to say, and then suddenly a certain quote starts blowing up, and that becomes a story that someone has to answer to. And that's the kind of thing that the Bills have always avoided, Eric, under this regime, which is we just avoid those distractions. We avoid those kinds of situations where we have to talk about something that's not related to what we're trying to accomplish on the field.
And I think in those like moments where something did creep up, whether it's with Diggs and whatnot, the coaching staff and some of the decisions they've made in game, I do feel like over the years, they've done a much better job of facing it head on and just coming out and directly saying it. You've seen McDermott evolve in the limelight and in the spotlight and in interviews. And that's been fun to actually see. And I'm sure you even get a sense of it, speaking with him on and off camera, that he has evolved as a coach, and to see, him do that is got to be pretty cool. And, some of the players that have been there for years, I'm sure you're seeing that evolution as well, that comfort of talking to you guys in the media, bumping into them out in the community, and they're becoming more comfortable in that role. But let's talk about the defense. All right. Let's talk about the impact that we hope we see from the Bills defense, their defensive line. It's an area that Bean and this regime has tried to consistently upgrade and add different pieces to, but it seems that in some of these big moments, it's disappeared, or they haven't been as productive as most fans want to see. So this defensive line, the additions of Joey Bosa, Ogunjobi, on the staff, Ryan Nielsen, and guys like that, the upgrades and additions through the draft and free agency. What are you expecting from this defensive line this year? Are they going to make the impact that Brandon Bean has wanted from his defensive line in the past few years?
Yeah, listen, I think that the Bills have had a clear intention to change what their kind of body type is, what they're looking for on the defensive line this year. Look at the size they brought in, right? Look at Deion Walker. I know TJ Sanders isn't the biggest guy, right? But he's an athletic guy that's going to be able to help out there. But Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi, like they went out and they said, we're going to get a little bit bigger up front. And I think that was by design. It was intentional. And, think, why is that? Well, look, the Bills have always been an athletic, penetrating defensive line, and that's not going to change. They're going to be, they're not a, this is where the part of the show that I think people like, the one gap versus two gap. What does that mean, right? So one gap is you're responsible for your one gap. You, shoot that gap, and you can get in the backfield. A two gap guy is a guy that, okay, I'm responsible for what's right and what's left of me. I got to hold up my guy, and I can kind of do each side, right? And that's not going to get you in the backfield. But the only guys that do that are the bigger guys who are strong enough to be able to anchor that, right? Like that's not Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver is a penetrating guy. So I think the Bills have kind of gone with a different philosophy here. And I think Nielsen's a really interesting addition because of the guys he's coached in the past and because of, what they're looking for that group. I also think Jason Rebrovich is really interesting here.
Rebs, yeah.
And people don't just Jason Rebrovich, and I love that you called him Rebs because, we've all gotten to know Jason a little bit over the years. Clarence High School, he's back coaching now. He's with the Packers. He was a pass rush specialist coach with the Packers, right? And like, think about that for a second. The Bills are hiring an assistant defensive line coach. This is kind of his forte. They're trying to get to the quarterback in different ways now too. And I think that maybe we'll see a little bit more. Maybe I'm not saying it's becoming a two gap defense, but maybe, Eric, we're going to see a little bit more of guys kind of being able to kind of control the line with other guys doing their job, getting to the quarterback a little bit around them. So I'm interested to see how these parts fit as a puzzle. And of course you have the 6-game suspensions, and that really, makes you go, okay, like what's going to happen once these guys get out there? By the way, obviously I'm talking about Landon Jackson as well, getting a little bit bigger. And this guy's huge up on the defensive line, but he's a defensive end. So it's not just, to me, it's like not just D tackle, it's defensive end. Joey Bosa is a big dude. When you're around Joey Bosa, you see how big he is, right? And obviously we know he's a great, pass rusher throughout his career. So I find it interesting, the defensive line, that they've kind of shifted to me a bit of their philosophy, maybe, of what they're looking for.
Yeah, the size, they came out and told us we were looking to get bigger. We were looking to get more physical at the line of scrimmage. And yes, the height of these guys it's next level. It's definitely something we haven't really seen. I think this scheme has always wanted the bigger defensive ends, the longer defensive ends, speed to power type guys more so than the bendy guys. I think Brandon Bean, when he went out and got Von Miller, was looking for more of that athletic, bendy, even at his age. He could still turn that corner and run the arc as a pass rusher. But I think they not only went bigger, but the guys that they brought in that are bigger, you see, they still have that attacking mindset, that penetrating mindset. They're not just power guys, like you said, looking to two gap or looking to just stop the run. They're actually, like Landon Jackson, as big as and long as he actually is very athletic. And you see that on his tape when he's rushing the passer. And so they went bigger, but those are also guys with the size that can also bump all over. And so bring in Ryan Nielsen. The one thing he's always done is show different types of looks up front, those simulated pressures where they're showing everyone up front in those pass rush situations. But then as a ball snap, they're only rushing 4, but which 4 are dropping and which 4 are coming, you don't really know. And so I think that's where Nielsen and that's where Rebs will help the pass rush. Not just the technique and how to win the one-on-one rush that Rebs as a pass rush specialist can do with these guys, but the situations, those third down situations, the Bills were bad on third downs last year. You know, the only thing that was their saving grace as a defense were their ability to get turnovers. And so, and when you're going into a season, it's not something, turnovers is not something you can just completely rely on. As good as McDermott's defenses have, they have been consistent in that area, but each year you just never know. So having the size, but still having that attack mentality. Deion Walker is a massive guy, but he's not a two-gapper. He is a penetrating style defensive lineman. And so it was interesting to see that mindset of, yes, we need to get bigger, we need to get physical, but at the same time, they needed to improve their pass rush. I think they did that with those guys they brought in, not just the players, but the coaches as well. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I want to make a point here too that we all know the Bills linebackers are a bit undersized for today's NFL, right? They're a bit. And I think that's also part of it. Like, you've had some wear and tear, right? Terrell Bernard has had a couple injuries. Matt Milano, we know, has had a couple injuries. Well, how do you keep those guys healthy? You keep them clean. And if you can be a little bit bigger and even though you're penetrating, if the offensive line has to be kind of tied up with a defensive lineman, that allows your linebackers to be able to do what they have to do. And now you don't have a bigger offensive lineman getting into a undersized linebacker. So I think all of this is part of it.
Yeah, and I think I like the staff. I think the staff additions of Rebs and Nielsen, it's gonna be cool because you have a guy that can teach the techniques, and both Nielsen and Rebs. Those guys are gonna be as like secondary coaches and as assistants. They're gonna be able to get more hands-on, have more freedom to work with a lot of these younger guys to develop them over time. I think that's cool. Nielsen, he's, like you said, he's worked with a lot of guys in the past that are bigger in stature, especially at DNs. And we're talking in New Orleans, the Calais Campbells of the world, Cam Jordan, Sheldon Rankins, Carl Granderson has come a long way as a defensive end for the Saints. And then, Marcus Davenport had his ups and downs, but again, those bigger edge guys and some of those really, good defensive interior guys, Nielsen has done a great job of working those guys. And, Rebs in Green Bay, what I liked about him is, he was taking guys out of 3-point stances, putting them in 2-point stances, and getting them comfortable in a lot of those ways. And, being able to develop guys in more of, over the years, has been more of like an odd front system where they're running like a 3-4, where they have outside linebackers that are kind of rushing. So seeing that hybrid edge, defensive end development with him, working in Green Bay, and over the years, just overall, it's been fun to watch. So I'm interested to see, it's something we talked about in the film room. The D line does have to step it up, create pressure, but turn pressure into sacks. I think that is something that being in this regime has tried to get over the last couple of years. And we hope that they are able to turn those pressures into sacks, because they get pressure. They do a good job of getting pressure, but they need to get home. And I think that's why you bring in guys like Bosa. They need closers. We've heard that for years now, right? When going back to when they went out and got Von Miller. So, but they need help on the back end too. You got to be able to.
Frankly, it's what's held them back right at the end of the season, Eric. Right? I mean, whether Cincinnati at home, and that was a game that a lot of things could have gone different. But Kansas City, especially losing in the playoffs to Kansas City, the difference really has been getting to Patrick Mahomes. And other teams have done it. We saw the Texans get to Patrick Mahomes. We saw the Eagles get to Patrick Mahomes. We saw the Buccaneers get to Mahomes. The Bills haven't been able to. That's been the difference in those critical moments. And I remember in OTA's minicamp, and you had tweeted about one of the videos that one of us, I think Josh Reed, had put it out, and I was there as well, that there was some games being played on the D line.
Yeah.
And, there were some stunts, and you're like, oh my God, this is like really something we haven't seen a lot of.
Yeah, that's what excites me about Nielsen and having his experience. And that's something that, when they divvy up the game plan and what to work on, what to look for during the game, because each coach has certain responsibilities during the week for game plan stuff. My excitement about Nielsen is he's going to have a little more freedom. He's going to be kind of leaned on, as that consultant, like, hey, 3rd and 7, we're terrible on 3rd and 7 last year. We allowed 47 first downs on 3rd and 7 last year. What can you do to boost that pass rush? Not necessarily blitzing more, but which is something he did a lot with the Jags. But what can you do that fits our philosophy to make it look like we're blitzing, simulated pressures, creeper pressures, but again, confusing and attacking the offensive line and their protection and what they're expecting to see? He's going to have a little more freedom to do that as an assistant coach, more so than he had as a defensive coordinator with the Jags or with the Falcons. And so when I saw that clip you guys posted, I was like, I've seen that twist before.
Yeah.
I've seen that, because as soon as they brought him on board, I went and watched film on his defenses and what his philosophy is. And it was those situations, those third downs, which again, the Bills were so bad at last year, that he brought some really cool stuff, more so with the Falcons than the Jags. His freedom, I think, as a coach this year could really help boost the Bills defense in those high leverage moments.
It's so funny. It goes back to what you said to start the show, which is every practice you're thinking about, what are we working on today? Like, you're not just doing these things in mini camp to do them. Hey, let's just see if this works. There's a plan. There's a plan that's going to be carried 100%. Over to training camp, which is going to be carried over into the preseason in week 1. So that's really cool to kind of see that evolution of it.
Yeah, I mean, they have a plan, especially like if you're talking camp, or even practice during the week, during the year. There's a plan, like how many reps this guy's going to take, who's taking reps in these situations. It's right. That detailed, guys. Like hey, I want Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders in on this twist in this moment in the game, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 5 situations, 3rd and 4 to 6. I need these two guys in at defensive tackle so I can show this pressure or show this look to create the play that they want to make in those high leverage situations. It's that detail, guys. Like, I mean, scout team cards, like all that stuff is mapped out at training camp and executed, as best they can when they have practice, because it's a limited amount of time on the field. And so taking the stuff from the meeting rooms to the field, it has to be detailed. It has to be followed to a T, within the time of segment. 10-minute segment here at camp. You see it, in the end zones out at camp. Everything is broken down prior to that practice. And so it's cool to see when you're there, and you're able to get those moments of recording the coaches coaching up certain details, certain techniques, certain looks. I mean, that's what was so fun to see Nielsen leading that drill and the details of, hey, when that penetrator on that stunt, when he comes in, that first guy through, you got to hit the hip of the center and pick the center so that you can help the looper get open. Like, and it's something Eric would always talked about. The Patriots always used to do that to him. Those little games and those little, techniques, it's going to be fun to watch this staff, the new guys they added on defense, teaching these things week in and week out when you're out at practice.
I remember that drill specifically when we were out at minicamp. And one thing, it might not have showed up in some of the videos you saw, because, we're doing all the actual movement and once the whistle goes. But the coaching that was going on there, they were literally showing like where to place the hand as you're coming through.
Yeah.
Right. Like how close you want to be to your point of hip to hip and all that. Like there's a difference between putting your hand a little above the hip in the rib section or a little down below, or, it was really interesting to see the fine detail they were pointing out to the players.
And it's a detail that the Bills kind of lost sight of last year. The Bills didn't run a lot of stunts last year for whatever reason. It was definitely a lot lower than the year before. And so there was, it was concerted. It was a concerted effort, in my opinion, that they didn't want to run a lot of stunts for whatever. I mean, the main reason probably is in some of these big games, they were having the mobile quarterbacks kind of break contain on those twists where the integrity of the pass rush lanes were lost. And, guys, I mean, look at the Detroit game. Even guys like Jared Goff were getting out of the pocket and scrambling and making plays. And guys like that are just usually on the spot quarterbacks. And so I think, they made a concerted effort to not run a lot of stunts last year, but it kind of hurt them in some situations, regardless of what happened. And so it'll be interesting to see them if they up that percentage of running stunts this year. Because like we said, they not only have size, but they have athleticism and length that can win first touch, that can create these picks and rubs on these stunts to get to the quarterback and affect the quarterback.
No doubt. It's going to be really fun to watch that come together at camp.
All right. So the pass rush is one thing, but the secondary also has to be better. They have to disguise better pre to post snap. I feel like, last year, the Bills, a lot of completions in those high leverage situations. I mean, they were 32nd in completion percentage on third downs, allowing 66.9% passes complete. And they were getting a lot of teams in third and longs. The average third down for them, Sal, was 3rd and 7.59. Like they were getting a lot of third and longs, but they were not able to get off the field. They were allowing big plays and completions. And so the picture has to be better on the back end. They have to disguise pre to post snap. And one person who I think that is going to have a huge hand in this, and we hope that he's tapped in. And this is the segment we're going to be doing each and every week. It's called Tapped In, and this is brought to you by our sponsor, Man Brewery. Thanks to them for sponsoring us for the next year. Glad to have them on board. Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop is a guy that the Bills obviously drafted and have high hopes for, and I'm sure a lot of fans felt like he was kind of a letdown with his injury early last year in camp, and then having some ups and downs when he did get in, which is expected, especially of the safety position in the Bills defense. You know, he's a guy that we hope is tapped in, is locked in this year. There's been a lot of talk about how his rapport and his go-to guy has been Taylor Rapp, and the Bills have been super high on Taylor Rapp. And I know you have been saying it. You've been at the forefront saying, hey, Taylor Rapp is loved by the Bills.
Yep.
Don't expect him to be out of the lineup. So Cole Bishop, Taylor Rapp, talk about the safety position and us hoping that Cole Bishop can take that step in year 2 in the Bills defense.
Yeah. And listen, I remember draft day waking up and there were all these, NFL national insiders suddenly on Malachi Starks for the Bills. You remember that day, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I remember Jeremy and Joe on WGR, they bring me on and they're like, oh my God, all these guys. And, we know that those guys, they start to hear information, they put it out there. Why are they doing this? They don't want to be wrong. And all these people are saying Malachi Starks. And I just didn't believe it for 1 second, because I can tell you, being around this team, being around the people who make decisions with this team, understanding without being around them how they operate, Taylor Rapp is somebody that they really believe in. And they just spent a 2nd-round asset on Cole Bishop, who they really believe in. It was never, to me, ever going to be a safety early for the Bills. And I said, I don't think they take a safety until day 3. They never took one at all, actually, a safety. They didn't draft one. And look, I get it. Fans have their reservations. Understand. My job is to bring you why the team is doing certain things, why they aren't doing things, what they believe. And I was very, very confident they were not going to draft somebody to compete with either Taylor Rapp or Cole Bishop.
Yeah.
Because the number one word, as you know, Eric, for this defense is trust. They have to have somebody and people they trust in those spots. It is such a vital position. You go back to Sean McDermott's defense in Philly, and he's talked about Brian Dawkins before, right? You talk about his defense in Carolina. You talk about his defense in Buffalo, Micah and Jordan. Part of the reason Micah and Jordan lasted so long, yes, they're great players. We know that. But it's because he knew he could trust them back there, and they were just so steady. I think a big reason why what you just brought up about last year and some of the struggles on the later downs, the longer yardage, whatever, versus what they're trying to get. Look, Damar Hamlin did a nice job on 1st and 2nd down. But once you get to 3rd down, it's not a guy you're putting in center field, right? It's not a guy that's going to be over the top, going to make these athletic plays. I think that hurt the Bills. And this is not smear against Damar. I think Damar had a much better year than a lot of people give him credit for, but he's a limited safety is what he is. I think they're hoping Cole Bishop, and they believe Cole Bishop can be a guy that you can now start to play those games again with Taylor Rapp. They love Taylor Rapp. And look, I know Taylor Rapp got hurt a little bit. He's a little bit undersized. He missed 3 games. I mean, yeah, that happens. I don't think he's had this long injury history in his career or anything like that. The way he plays, sometimes things are going to happen like that. And the way Cole Bishop plays, by the way, because he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the box. He's going to be physical. They need to be buttoned up with the guys that are behind them. But more than anything, I think they feel they now have a guy in his 2nd year who's been with them the entire offseason in Cole Bishop. And yes, last year was the injury, didn't go well, but now he's here. And I think now they believe they can put him on the field. They can trust him with Taylor Rapp. They can start to play those games again. And now it doesn't matter down in distance. Leslie Frazier and I used to always have these really good talks. Leslie played safety for the 85 Bears, right? I mean, one of the greatest defenses of all time. And Leslie and I used to talk a lot about the evolution of safety. And I always loved picking his brain about how there's no more free and strong safety. This just doesn't exist anymore. And he would tell me, Sal, we don't have a free. We don't have a strong. These guys have to do everything. You have a guy that lines up in the tight end side, if you want to call him a strong safety. But we can do whatever we want with these guys. And you have to start thinking about the safety position like that. It's not like when we were growing up and the Bills had Leonard Smith and Mark Kelso, and Leonard Smith would come down and try and smash you in the face, and Mark Kelso would just back up and play center field. That's not how it works anymore. And I think they believe, I think Damar wasn't quite the high-end safety they could do all those things with, and isn't, but he's good enough to do what you need him to do to kind of stay on schedule. I think they believe that Cole Bishop can be a little bit more of that guy.
I'm excited for year 2 for Cole, because not just of his athleticism, but, again, being under the wing of Taylor Rapp. When you watch film on this defense, Taylor Rapp is that communicator. Him and Terrell Bernard are huge pieces to just getting lined up and getting into the right coverage. Hey, there's motion. You see the hand signals and the changes in the coverage happening via Taylor Rapp on the back end. And I think that rapport is important. And as you said, Hyde and Poyer were so good at just non-verbally communicating and being on the same page. And we didn't quite have that, with the group last year. injuries, young, rookies trying to make their way in the league. And so, yeah, I do think that rapport is a huge piece that
I'm glad you brought
it
that
starts
up.
in camp, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember one of the reasons why I knew the Bills weren't going to take a safety was because, A, they just drafted one in the second round. So you know that they're kind of hoping that guy. But if anybody's thinking about Taylor Rapp, exactly what you said happened at the owners' meetings. And you got to pick up on these things that people say to you. And Sean McDermott said to us at the owners' meetings when we talked with him, exactly what you just did. He said Taylor Rapp sets the coverage on the back end. He said, well, people don't realize how important he is, like in all those things that go into it. That's the trust factor. Can you really bring in rookie, draft somebody and say, oh, throw on the field and you're going to do all that? I mean, your head's spinning right away, right? So they have to have that trust. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's true. Part of the reason I knew that they love Taylor Rapp, and whether fans think that they should or not, I get it. Like you can have the opinion on that, but I know that the Bills do because he is vitally important to all those things you just mentioned about seeing and why. And like that, a safety sees everything, right? I played safety and I can tell you, like, I know when I would be back there looking, like your first job is count the number of guys you got, right? Like we got 11 on the field, right? And then you're like, okay, now you can see the whole field and you can see if someone's a little bit out of position. That's Taylor Rapp's, job. Like, okay, you got to move over here. You got to move over there. Speaking of Mark Kelso, funny story for you. I remember when Kelso was on the radio broadcast, he was our color analyst prior to Eric Wood. And we would go to camp and we'd go to practice. And it was so funny, Eric. Like, you know how we stand on the sidelines and watch practice? Mark Kelso could not do that. He had to go behind the defense to watch practice because he was a safety, and that's how he watched the game.
That's his perspective. Yeah, that's what he's used to seeing.
That's right.
That's so funny. Yeah, that rapport is huge. Obviously, in this defense, like I said, a lot of the stuff happens game plan wise. They're very regimented. Just from talking to players, breaking down with film with players, they're very detailed on. Hey, this is the formation we're seeing right now. We need to be in this coverage. We need to be in this look. They're very detailed in their game plans. They're not a team that has, a lot of different like coverage checks. Like, hey, we got to do this, on the fly. Everything is very planned out just from talking to players, like Poyer over the years. And so, yeah, that rapport is huge. That trust is huge. But what I love about you compared him to Hamlin, yes, athleticism obviously is different. There's a lot of versatility. Bishop last year, even limited snaps, he had 157 snaps in the box, 162 at free safety. So he can do that, which he did that at Utah. And one thing that, again, I've been studying as of late is the third downs, 3rd and 7, plus 3rd and longs. The Bills in those situations last year, 3rd and 7 plus, they were in cover 3. So single high coverage. You talked about Hamlin and not really being a post safety type guy. They were in cover 3, 34.5% of the time. That was 10th ranked overall last year on 3rd and 7 plus. On the back end, that they're being 10th there in cover 3. In cover 1, another single high safety look, man coverage, they were in cover 1, 14.3%. That was ranked 28th. So now with some of the upgrades, at corner and the secondary, maybe that number cover 1, they could play a little more man coverage because now they have a guy like Bishop that can do a little bit of both, play that post safety over the top, which he did a lot at Utah. It'll be interesting to see that athleticism and how it translates on the field. It's something, again, the Bills have been kind of looking to add since Hyde and Poyer have gone, they were on the tail end of their careers, and the Bills are trying to rebuild that safety position. So they got the heady guy in Rapp that can kind of lead on and off the field. And now he took Bishop under his wing. That'll be interesting to see how Bishop comes along. And we hope that he's tapped in. We hope that he's locked in. I know his team, his camp feels like he's going to be, and that he is going to win the starting position. I know the Bills, obviously, they want him to win the position. A lot of fans are excited for that as well. So we hope that he is tapped in. Again, brought to you by Thin Man Brewery. And just so you guys know, Thin Man Brewery, they're coming back with a bang. Most of the fans of Thin Man over the years, they know this. They know Pils Mafia, right? They're bringing this back. It's rebranded. It's a bold rebrand, honestly. And it's they're not just bringing Pils Mafia, back with a new brand. They're actually bringing a new product to sell, and they're bringing what we call Mafia Light. Mafia Light hits different. It's 3.5%, so it's a little lower, but it's only 80 calories. And I like these kind of beers in the summer. You're talking, we're in July 20th right now, and you're midsummer, and it's like 90 degrees every day. You want a light beer when you're out on the beach. Mafia Light is going to be that for you guys, courtesy of Thin Man Brewery. It's very light. I'm 42, so like I don't want a heavy beer. I want it to be lighter. I don't want to be filled up and weighed down. 80 calories. I mean, that's pretty low for a beer. It's the first craft pilsner of its kind, brewed and packaged right in Western New York. A true game changer for local beer lovers. Definitely changing the game. And we're good. We're glad to have Thin Man Brewery on hand. We're gonna have a couple different on-site podcasts with them. That's gonna be fun to get out there and try this new beer, Mafia Light. It's gonna hit the stores in the Western New York area, Buffalo, Rochester markets, early August, just in time for the season, especially if you're talking tailgating. Mafia Light, again, tapped in, great segment we're going to do each and every week, courtesy of Thin Man Brewery. We hope that, Cole Bishop, when we get out to camp, Cole Bishop is that guy that secures that starting spot for the Bills secondary, and hope that he's tapped in to kick off this season. So with that said, I want to flip sides of the ball here. I want to talk about the Bills offense, some of the additions that they brought in, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore. Where do we think they help Allen in the Bills offense and make their impact with the Bills this year?
Well, I think number one, first and foremost, is just going against man-to-man coverage, right? The Bills they saw a lot of man-to-man last year because teams dared them. And they said, you can't beat us. And your guys aren't separators. Separation is such an interesting word, right? We hear separation a lot. People think just running by guys down the field. Keon Coleman is a separator in a different way, right? Because he's longer strider and he's got the height advantage, and we could separate like that. But the Bills, what they really did kind of struggle last year getting separation off the line of scrimmage on those shorter to intermediate routes. That's where Joshua Palmer's strength is. Yeah. He's a separator. He's a route runner. He's a one-on-one man beater. He's a really good route. Look, Stephon Diggs, same thing. Stephon Diggs had speed, but he wasn't a blazer. But he's such a good route runner. He's a separator. That's how he got open. When half the time you watch the highlights of Steph's early career with the Bills, and he's wide open because he did a great job to find that. So I think number one, that's where that happens with Joshua Palmer. And then you add in Elijah Moore, who can be that guy, but now he's got a little bit more of that speed and he can get down the field. And I was really impressed with, what he was able to do in the intermediate routes during mini camp and OTAs. And I think that's where the Bills can now kind of try to win on all three levels, right? With their wide receivers. And I just remember that Baltimore game that the Bills lost out in Baltimore so vividly last year, and they just could not get open. And they lose Shakir early. I think he played with the ankle. It was an early injury, but he played with the rest of the game. And even Shakir, he's a really good route runner. He can get open in his own right. But once he wasn't a threat, it just was like lockdown city. And that's when they were able to get after Allen. And that's when they were able to put pressure. That's when Allen got hurt a little bit. And those are the things you want to avoid. So I think, Eric, number one, first and foremost, that's where Joshua Palmer and Elijah Moore come in, which is we have to find a way, the Bills are thinking, to have separators around the field. The field is not only vertical, it's 53 and a third yards wide horizontally, right? And we want to make sure that we use every inch of that.
Yeah. And, the Bills have been a strong run team the last couple of years. And I think teams are going to start to, add guys to the box. And they had in certain situations, add guys to the box to slow down the run game, because that's where, the offense is almost unstoppable. If they get the run game going and you have Josh Allen, regardless of who's that wide receiver and who he's thrown to, it's dangerous. You want to make what teams left-handed, only able to do one thing or the other. So I think defenses are going to commit to stop the run a little bit more. So they're going to see more single high coverages. And like you said, they got to have guys that they can go to in certain situations that can beat and win a one-on-one coverage. And when you have those trips formations where you have three guys on one side and one on the other, that guy on the backside has to be able to run a full route tree and separate versus press versus off and do all of those things. And when you hear Josh Palmer talk or you watch his film, he's a pro's pro. Like, he knows how to do those things. He talked about this offseason how to run a slant route in different ways versus different coverages, again, or different techniques, press, off, jam. Like, he's a smart guy. He's very intellectual when it comes to reading what's across from him, whether it's overall coverage or the technique he's facing. And so I do think him and Moore, while they win in different ways, Moore's with speed, acceleration, and burst, I do think they're adding different elements to this offense. And for as much as everyone wants to talk about how the Bills did in certain situations, struggled to separate wide receiver wise, kudos to Joe Brady and this offensive staff, because versus man coverage last year, the Bills were still really good. And a lot of that was some of those picks, those rubs, the scheme. I mean, even versus man coverage last year, for all the talk about the Bills wide receivers not separating, they were still top 10 in EPA per drop back versus man coverage. And they were winning a lot of plays, 21 touchdowns versus man coverage last year. That was number one in the league.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that too. And number one, you're right. Joe Brady scheming it up obviously helped. And he had to get in the lab and say, how do I get my guys in position? The Bills also had a really good offensive line to keep Josh Allen healthy. And if you have more time, you get that extra half second to a second for a guy to get open. That's going to help in man-to-man, right? So I think, if you can give your quarterback and Josh Allen a little more time, and then Josh can buy time as well, now you're like, okay, now I found a guy who just, if you have to cover him for so long, he's going to be down the field. So I think that helps. It's funny. I listen, I hear people tell me, well, Joshua Palmer was number 3 wide receiver on the Chargers. What's he supposed to do in Buffalo? I mean, these are just baseline types of analysis that just aggravate me because his role in LA was so different than his role will be in Buffalo. And my God, Eric, there couldn't be more of a difference between what Greg Roman is trying to accomplish in that offense and what his role is because of that versus what Joe Brady's trying to do in the Bills offense and his role because of that.
Yeah, totally. And if there's one area that I think last year Allen did struggle, and maybe it was a scheme, maybe it was some of the pieces he had around him, that intermediate area, the 10 to 19 yard range, he struggled at times. He was top 10 in EPA, 9th in throw EPA, which is good. But when we're talking efficiency and, getting the ball into that middle of the field area in that 10 to 19 yard range, he wasn't all that good. He was 27th in completion percentage at 48.5%. in that 10 to 19 yard range, 30th in wide receiver target percentage at 57.4%. So he didn't look to his receivers a lot in that range. And so hopefully Duncan K can help and augment the wide receiver group because he's probably more of a wide receiver than the actual inline Y old school tight end. But guys like Moore and Palmer, they excite me because when it comes to the route running of Palmer, the top of his routes, the way he can break on these in-breaking routes, he makes them look the same. It's so cool to watch because he's that technician when it comes to route running. Elijah Moore, I'm excited in that 10 to 19 yard range for him when the Bills do run those play action shots. When they do run, that play action fake and they want to hit that 10 to 12 yard bangs, across the middle post route, and they are able to get into the thick of the defense in that intermediate range. The play action game for Moore, whether he's running it on the boundary or they're bringing him in on motion, snapping it and running those play action shots, I think his speed to get into that intermediate area and do something after the catch is what I'm most interested in watching for his role in the Bills offense.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And I think right away, going back to early in the show, what are you watching at practice? That's one of the things I'm focusing on right away, which is where do I see Palmer and Moore fitting in and the number of reps they're getting and how often they're being used. Those are little clues you get to the ultimate goal of figuring out what the overall product looks like, 53-man roster, and how they want to build this offense.
Yeah, when it comes to camp, those segments that they carve out, the usage, how often they're in there, and more importantly, hey, what's the down and distance? What are they practicing? Because again, each the game plan, the playbook for Sundays, like the game plan going in, the plays they're choosing are called in certain situations on that play call sheet. Hey, this is a play for base down, first and second down. Hey, this is for third and short, 3rd and 1 to 3, 3rd and 7+, it's 3rd and long. When are those guys being used? Those are things that, you keep an eye on, that we keep an eye on when we're watching practice, and fans should as well when you get out to camp, because those situations are very telling because maybe they don't use it in the season. Maybe they're testing it out, which they do that a lot in camp, but it is something that it's a little breadcrumb that, fans and analysts can watch when we're talking guys like this, like new players on offense, new players on defense, what role they're going to play in what situations. That's what's so exciting about camp. Camp is right around the corner, Sal. I'm super excited. I'm happy that you're getting ready to go out there. I know, again, it can be a grind, but you have a great job. You're a very lucky man. You know that. And you're going to go watch some football for a few weeks. I can't wait. Season's upon us. And that's why we're excited here at Turf to Tape each and every week. Again, we're going to try to bridge the gap between the casual fan and then the hardcore enthusiasts, the film junkies, the X's and O's, people that want to learn more about football. We're going to have you covered on both ends. And Sal, this was a good first edition of Turf to Tape, man. I appreciate you joining me.
I enjoyed it. I hope everybody else enjoyed it. We got a lot more coming your way. I can't wait to dig in once the games start and breaking things down.
So make sure to subscribe on Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We're going to have this podcast each and every week pushed out on all audio platforms. Obviously, you can join us on YouTube, on the Cover One YouTube channel. And I know Sal from time to time will have it on his YouTube channel as well. Sal, what's the name of your channel? And
it's just Sal Sports
other
everywhere.
links. Yeah. Any other links that you want to plug before we get out of here?
Hey, I mean, like, listen, anybody who knows me knows you can find me at Sal Sports, whether that's on any social media platform, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And, and Matt Bove and I are still doing It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. And, we're keeping you updated there with everything going on. I got my Sal's House podcast, which is not only just football and sports and life and a lot of people, but that's where you can find all that. And this is just another great addition to it for people who want more content and really crave more of the football X's and O's and insider talk.
Yeah. Again, thank you for joining me. I'm excited about this this collaboration over the next year and beyond. Again, this has been our first taping of Turf to Tape. This is our Bills training camp primer. Camp's here. Football's here. We're glad to have it back, and we're glad to have Man Brewery on board with us as our sponsor.
And I want to make sure we thank Colin Ritchie, our guy behind the scenes, doing a great job.
Yes, Colin, great work on setting up this show and helping us get this thing going, and a lot of work ahead for you after the show and for this season. He's going to be out at the camp with us for a couple of days as well, maybe even the scrimmage. So we'll all get to hang out for a little bit. But again, I'm Eric Turner. That's Sal Capaccio. This has been Turf to Tape, brought to you by Man Brewery. Until our next edition, we'll see you later.